The night I realized contempt sounds different on camera than it does in your head, I was standing under a chandelier I couldn't afford in a dress I bought for the selfie. I'm 38, and the last year has been a montage of wrong angles. Me, always at the center, somehow cropping the person holding the camera out of the frame. My husband, my ex-husband now, was Nate. 41. An engineer disguised as a regular person. Old leather belt, hands that remembered every bolt they'd ever tightened, a brain like a neat drawer. He designed infrastructure systems for storm-prone towns. Boring, brilliant work that meant a grocery store kept power when the grid hiccuped, that ICU machines didn't stutter when rain slapped sideways. I used to call him my human sandbag when hurricanes showed up on the news, and he'd laugh like it was affectionate. It wasn't. It was a way to make him small while sounding cute. When we got married, I said yes to stability and then spent 4 years punishing stability for not being a movie. I compared him to men whose faces I only knew in squares, proposal jets, anniversary diamonds, he just gets me, captions curated by strangers. We had a mortgage and a garden bed where nothing grew but tomatoes and guilt. Nate would come home in safety boots and tell me about a county board meeting that approved a resilience grant, and I'd smile and say, "You're amazing," then scroll past a couple drinking champagne in Iceland and feel meanness in my chest like a little thorn. I fed the thorn. I called it standards. I complained about our car, too old, our vacations, too domestic, our wedding ring, too practical. I used air quotes, and the way he took my parents to the airport at 6 a.m. Too available. He made pancakes on Sundays like a person who believes in rituals. I filmed them once for a reel with a caption that said, "He's not flashy, but he's mine." Strangers wrote, "Wife material," and I mistook that for praise. It was a warning, and I was the problem. The night everything broke, we were at a fundraiser thrown by a boutique foundation that funds climate tech. A lot of money in a room trying to look like conscience. Linen tablecloths, name badges printed on seed paper, someone's acoustic version of an 80s anthem. Nate had helped a coastal clinic design a microgrid. Solar, battery, automatic islanding when the main grid falls over. The clinic director was there, sweet, practical, the kind of woman who wears sneakers with a suit because she is too busy to convince shoes to be comfortable. A speaker introduced Nate like he was a secret the room had been waiting to discover. He walked up to the mic and said thank you like he meant it. He talked for 6 minutes. No buzzwords, just reasons. About diesel fumes and NICUs and the difference between a building with lights on and a building that can save lives. People put their phones down. You could feel the room remembering electricity is not magic. Then he came back to our table, eyes bright in the way they get when the world is solvable. And I, who had never designed anything more complex than a mood board, leaned in and whispered, "That was cute, but maybe don't say breaker panel so many times." "It's not sexy." He blinked. "It's a breaker panel." I rolled my eyes. "You know what I mean." "Tell a story." "People with money pay for stories." He looked at his drink for a second and said, softly, "I tell the story I know. It should have ended there." I pushed. "You could try," I said, the way a person pushes a glass too close to an edge. "If you want to be taken seriously by people at this level, act like you belong at this level." He set his napkin down. "At what level?" he asked. "The level where you don't wear the same suit to every gala," I said. I smiled because I thought humor made cruelty digestible. On stage, the MC thanked the event's anchor donors, and a woman at the next table stood to polite applause. I knew her face from a profile, self-made, stealth wealth, the kind of billionaire who buys land to plant trees instead of yachts to park them. She wore a simple black dress and an expression like she'd figured out something important and wasn't going to explain it. When she sat, she leaned toward her date and whispered something that made him grin. I hated her for having a face that looked peaceful in a room I was failing at. After dessert, there was a mingle hour. I wandered toward a cluster of PR people to gather crumbs I could turn into a post. Nate drifted toward the clinic director to ask about her backup inventory. That's who he was. When rooms got noisy, he found the person holding the real thing. I didn't notice the billionaire until she was standing in front of him, asking a question you can't fake. How did you get the latency down on the transition? Our pilot keeps tripping. Nate lit up. They talked like two people who recognized each other's language. He sketched on a cocktail napkin. She listened with her hands, the way good listeners do, palms open like a promise. I walked over, spooked by how much I wanted to be the person making his face look like that. "Hi," I said, sliding beside him. "I'm the wife." She smiled. "You're married to the person who just explained brownouts better than any deck I've seen." "Better than a deck is a deck," I said, like a riddle, then laughed at myself. "He's not much of a storyteller." She looked at him. "I think he is," she said, and then to him. "Would you be open to consulting for us? We have a network of clinics along the Gulf. Our team is brilliant. We just need someone who hates blackouts more than they love demos." I squeezed his arm too tight. "We'll have to see," I said, as if I was the we. He said, "Happy to help," in a voice that didn't ask my permission. She handed him a card with an email and left like someone who actually had places to be. In the car, I told him I didn't like the way she talked to him, all direct and familiar. He said she talked to him like a colleague. I said, "She talked to you like a project." He said everything worth fixing was a project for a while. I said I didn't sign up to be a stepping stone in his little career arc, which was such a bizarre inversion of reality that silence was the only sane response. He slept on the couch to give us space, and then started showering at the gym. 2 weeks later, he moved 2 duffels to a rental 3 blocks away because that's as far as he could bear to go. He left the tomatoes. They never ripened. He consulted for the foundation. He flew to places with names we only hear when they're underwater. He met small-town electricians who could wire a building blindfolded. He sent me photos of roofs with new panels, of kids watching lights flick back on like a magic trick. I replied with thumbs-ups because grace wasn't available to me in that color. When the papers came, I thought I would die. They were simple, fair, the kind of divorce that says, "I loved you, but I won't argue with you anymore." No kids, a house to sell, accounts to split. I asked for the ring upgrade I'd been angling to guilt him into, which will be sickening to read for you, and was sickening to write for me. He said, "Keep the one you have or don't, but don't make me finance your apology." I Googled him more than I texted him, which is a sentence I'm still trying to forgive. He started appearing on panels with people who think in decades. He wore the same suit. He looked expensive because conviction does that to a person. 6 months after he moved out, I opened my phone and saw him on a stage beside her. The Billionaire. They were laughing at something only 2 people who'd survived a mess could find funny. A blog caption said, "Power couple?" with a question mark that didn't feel speculative. 2 days later, a magazine ran a series, an interview about resilience, a shot of her hand on his arm, a paragraph about a personal partnership rooted in shared work. He wasn't a handbag, he was an equal. I cried on my cereal. People told me to take the high road. I tried to find the nearest exit. I texted him a paragraph about how I was proud of him and how I'd been wrong and how I'd practiced shutting up. He replied, "Thank you. I hope you build a life you respect." It was the kindest non-invitation I've ever received. A year later, I saw the photo that would have strangled the old me with envy if it hadn't somehow, finally, set me free. Nate on a small porch with a coffee mug, hair mussed, smiling at a dog who'd clearly adopted him. No tags, no caption, a private picture posted by a friend who doesn't perform their friends. His hand. My favorite part of him, the tendon ridge along the thumb like a little map, rested on the dog's head. I stared until the plane I was on taxied to the gate, and the flight attendant asked if I was okay. I said yes, and almost believed myself. Everyone wants to know if she bought him. She didn't. She knows something I didn't. The prettiest thing you can give a person like Nate is room to do exactly what they're already good at. That's what money is supposed to do when it's not trying to make itself look big. Fund the boring, save the day quietly, credit the engineer. I learned that contempt sounds like advice when you're good at pretending your knife is a compliment. I learned that you're not enough is a mirror. You will see yourself in it when the room empties. I learned that the problem with a main character Fantasy is you don't notice when someone else stops being your supporting cast and becomes the lead in their own life. Sometimes I walk past the community center where Nate convinced our neighborhood to put a battery in the basement. The kids' after-school lights don't flicker anymore. I like to imagine him visiting one day, touching the panel with his palm like he always did, the way you touch a forehead to check a fever. I hope she's there, not as an accessory, but as a person who knows how to back good work and get out of the way. I hope he drinks coffee hot and eats pancakes on Sundays and never hears anyone make a joke about being not sexy again. If there's a moral, it's boring. Treat the person you love like a person you admire. Praise their unglamorous victories out loud. Applaud breaker panels. Don't build a life out of side-eye and then act surprised when the light goes out. He was always enough. I finally believe it. He just doesn't need me to. My remarks. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Well, she chipped at him with contempt until he chose self-respect over proximity. There's no courtroom twist here. Just realistic moves, quiet separation, equitable divorce, and a career that grew because his competence was valued. Wealthy partners don't rescue character. They fund impact that already exists. In real life, relationships often start through shared work, advisory projects, foundations, boards. If you want to keep a good partner, don't negotiate their worth with insults. Respect is practical. If you like grounded stories where steady wins, subscribe. More tomorrow.